Today, let's talk about a viewer question. Danger 1998 asked, Jerry, can you please do a video on how to deal with life being unfair? I was recently in a relationship. She was perfect, treated me right, versus my exes never treated me like her. Today, I found she got herpes from the last man she was with. I feel dead inside. Everything is gone, and I'm still here. Anyway, love the videos. Keep it up. 100. All right. Thank you for your appreciation, Danger 1998. And now let's talk about life being unfair. So, life. The basis that makes this phenomenon a problem is the underlying assumption that life needs to be fair. But the thing is, fair is a concept that we have created. In the animal world, is it fair to the salmons that the bears have to eat them? Is it fair to the worms that birds eat them? So, in reality, when we look outside of the concepts that humans have created and we just look at the wild, we see that in the grand scheme of things, it's just a circle of life going on and on and on. The concept of fairness is something that emerged with humanity. Prior to that, life and reality and existence, it just kind of is. There's no notion of balance, right? Like wolves, the alpha takes the meat and eats first and then leaves. And then the weakest one usually just kind of gets cut off from the pack, right? Which is why um, in the animal kingdom, survival of the fittest is a lot more pronounced than human. For example, we have a lot of disabled people because we now have the tools and the medicine and technology that can help them survive. But in the wild, when you look at the animals, it's very difficult for disabled animals to survive. So, in reality, everything just kind of is. That's the underlying basis of everything. But the concept of fairness is something that we have created. And for what? Is it when we introduce fairness and when we start balancing the inequalities, do we introduce the concept so it's beneficial to us? Or do we do it because we want to make our lives collectively worse? We introduce things, we create concepts so that we can use them for our benefit. So we realized, hey, turns out, if I am in a bit of a pickle and there are these social safety nets that can kind of guarantee survival for me when I'm in a really, really bad rut for whatever reason, turns out that that's sort of beneficial for me. So even if I'm not in that pickle right now, I can contribute to that social safety net so that other people in the pickle right now, which could be me theoretically tomorrow, can benefit from it. It gives us a second chance at things so that life just doesn't automatically end at the first bad thing, which kind of used to be the case in the olden days, right? When you got poisoned from eating a poisoned mushroom, that was kind of it. Um, when you got um, when you stepped on something really bad and then your legs it got infected, that was kind of it. But through medicine and through equitable distribution of medicine and through communities kind of taking care of everyone in the community, not just playing favoritism and such, the concept of fairness ultimately ended up being a helpful thing for all of us. So it is a concept that ultimately kind of improves our lives. It's good. But now we kind of got used to the fairness. And why did fairness emerge in the first place? Because our natural tendency is to want to hoard things. Our natural tendency is to want to benefit from other people's labor so that I don't have to do anything while I just reap the benefits of what other people have done. Humans have this, realized that, holy crap, turns out when you do that, life is so much easier and better. So all you need is kind of like power to subdue the other person, and then you can get a lot of things for free. So this, of course, is the easier way. If I have power, it's so easy for me to just exercise it on you. But when we do that, the more the downsides of that kind of power balance being off is pronounced. So when we experience the big downside of something, we want to seek to improve it. So how do we address it? By introducing different kinds of fairness and different kinds of equity and such. Okay, so this is the first foundation of fairness that we all have to remember, right? Like, the world isn't guaranteed to be fair. And that's not a problem. It's just how things are. We introduce fairness because it's generally a good thing to do. We have a lot to benefit from collective um, fairness. And we have a lot to benefit from when we can get into a bad situation, but we're saved by others. And when other people are in a bad place, we can help them. And then that makes the world a little bit fair. It gives more people more chances to kind of go on another day. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, let's talk a little bit about your situation. Now we talked about society in general. Now let's mix your situation and the society combined a little bit. So, I'm a Korean guy. That means I have to serve in the Korean military. And let me give you a little story behind. Let me give you a little bit of my personal history about fairness, right? So, I graduated from an American college, and I graduated from an American grad school. So I have a pretty good degree in computer science, right? Now, I had interned at LG Electronics, and we kind of verbally agreed that, hey, when after you graduate, you need to do military service, and our labs, our R&D department, we have positions, we have openings for people who want to do the military service as a researcher. So yeah, like when you graduate, let's talk, and then we'll kind of like make it work out. So that was sort of my plan, right? Okay, so I'll graduate, and then I'll just go to work at LG Electronics R&D as a researcher, and then I'll take care of my military like that, and yeah, I'll work so my job is kind of taken care of as well. But I graduated, and then I called the HR department, and turns out the positions have been filled. And now I did zero job preparation because it was my assumption that things were going to work out, but they didn't, right? So now I'm like, holy crap, do I need to go to the army? And, like shoot guns and throw grenades? But do I need to do that for 2 years? So now I'm like in a bit of a panic, right? Because I was originally looking at the prospect of being like a researcher, which is basically a civilian, right? And then now contrast that with like being going to an army for like 2 years, and I'm like, oh my god, what do I do now? So in a panic, I started applying to all these jobs, right? And I started applying to all these R&D positions, and I got an interview from one of them. Yay, which is good. But now that I remember the interview, I was all depressed and sad. Why? Because like you probably have an LG Electronics device at home, right? So I'm like, man, I'm supposed to go to this really prestigious, really good, R&D facility, but man, now I'm in this kind of like a shithole. Nobody knows about this R&D. Like, that's a really stupid, like, oh, what the fuck do they even do? So I was really judgmental, and I was really bitter about this whole situation. And there was an interview panel, and then the guys kind of like interviewed me around some coding questions, and like they asked me some data structure problems, like what's the runtime of appending something on linked list and then finding it, like retrieval on linked list, and then I didn't know anything because I didn't study at all. So I gave a BS answer, and the guy was like, well, that's actually really wrong because it's sort of like exact opposite of what you said. So now I'm like, okay, I don't even want to be here, and I'm feeling already bad, and now I feel stupid. So I'm like, okay, well, shit, thanks. I fucking hate this. And then uh, I left the interview, and and then there was this one other company called Neighbor. It's like the Google of Korea, right? And they said they haven't finalized the applicant for the military service. So I was like, after the interview, like I'm going home, I'm riding the bus, and I'm feeling so horrible. Like I bombed this interview, fucking hate the company. I don't have a lot of options, and out of like a Hail Mary, right? I just decided to call the HR department of Neighbor, and I'm like, hey, um, like I would rather just wait one more year. I'll find the reason to postpone the military. I'd rather wait 1 year if it means like you'll have an opening. So can you please let me know if there's an opening? Like even if it's not year, like I had already kind of decided that I'm just gonna reject this all other possibilities, and I don't know, maybe I was gonna go abroad for another year or something, like just to get another degree or something if I can just work through this mandatory military service, right? And I was just really distraught on the way home, and then I arrived at home and I got this call like, "Hey, uh, one of the applicants that we were eyeing had actually taken another job, so we have an opening for you. Do you want to interview?" I was like, "Do I want to interview? Of course I want to interview, right?" And then so I interviewed, I think like the next day, and this was a big company, so they kind of like they kind of knew that I was coming from a good school, and they knew that this is just like kind of a formality, right? Because like my degree means a lot to them. So I didn't have a technical interview. They just did like a personality interview, and then I was just kind of hired, right? Oh, I was like, fuck yeah, this is good. And then the other company that I interviewed for, surprisingly, although I bombed the interview, they still wanted to work with me because I guess it's kind of hard to find applicants, right? But I said, no, I found another position, so thank you, but like I'm gonna go with another company. And okay, so if you really think about this is really unfair, right? I didn't really have the technical qualifications to be an engineer, computer engineer. Like the dude who interviewed me at the smaller company, like that person, I think, really deserved the neighbor job, like the Korean Google job, more than me because he clearly knew his stuff, right? But just because of the virtue that I had a degree from overseas, I had like a high degree from overseas, and I spoke English, and like and things like that, it just kind of opened up a lot more options for me. And when I think about it like that, it's really unfair. But that doesn't really mean um, that I need to relinquish my position and I need to call the other guy and be like, "Hey, I got hired at Google, but then I think it's wrong for me to take the job, and I would actually love for you to take the job." Like I'm not gonna do that, right? Because why not? Because in the end, this is this is my personal story to kind of contextualize everything. But in the end, what I really want to tell you is that life tends to uh equalize over time. So what I mean is you'll have sometimes have a streak of luck. Like it'll have a spike. But then over time it's gonna normalize to just how you've always lived your life. Sometimes you will have a bad streak of luck. But again, that's gonna normalize, right? So the I got lucky at that one time. But a few years later, what happened? I got fired. And when I got fired, now I actually needed to look for a job, and I actually needed to do all the like technical coding interview. But I I supposedly was like a engineer for 5 years, but I knew even less than graduate, like a recent undergrad graduate. So I needed to kind of like swallow a lot of my pride and ego and like really start over, right? So if I had held on to my um ego and I was like, no, I need to, I need to be better than, this, then I wouldn't have been able to find another job to kind of like continue my life in the United States because at the time I was fired, I didn't really my visa was invalid, so I needed to leave the country until I found unless I found a job in a certain period of time, right? So what I'm trying to say is, yes, I got lucky a few times, but it didn't continue carrying me over. And eventually, there came a time when I needed to be honest and I catch up in a fair world. So what I'm saying is, right now you have a streak of bad luck, and right in the future you might have a streak of good luck. But the thing is, over time, it will normalize, and so the pain points that are kind of keeping you from growth, you're gonna hit it again eventually, right? So you sometimes life, when you look at life in a snapshot, it's not fair. But when you look at it in the long run, it generally tends to gravitate towards the fair side. Why? Because as a society, as civilizations, we have done a fairly good job at maintaining some sort of structure of fairness into our system. That's why a lot of people fought in the wars. That's why a lot of political disputes happened. But the way that social systems work and evolve is for the collective good. So what I'm saying is, you might have some bad times, you might have some good times, but overall, in the long run, things tend to gravitate towards a state of balance, which I think can be seen as fairness. Okay, so we covered reality of fairness and how fairness is kind of a human-made concept. Number two, we looked at how we can see things differently from a snapshot versus a long view. Now, let's talk about your specific case. So, your girlfriend has herpes, and I I don't have genital herpes, but I do have oral herpes. You would be surprised at how much of the population generally has herpes. Now, the thing is, my wife doesn't have herpes because why? I take very great precautions whenever I have an outbreak, right? So we eat things separately and we sleep separately. We do a lot of different things to make sure that I don't she doesn't contract herpes from me. So I have herpes. My wife doesn't. Doesn't mean anything about our marriage other than like I just have this physical symptom, right? So in terms of STDs, not that like oral herpes is necessarily an STD. Um, in terms of talking about all the different possibilities of diseases and ailments you can have, it's kind of like not that bad, right? Because there are viral well, herpes is a virus too, but there are genital viral diseases that don't really have a solution, right? And what's the king of all STDs, like HIV, right? So there are so many different possibilities where someone might contract something, but in the grand scheme of things, herpes is actually really, 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 really livable, and it's not that intensely bad, right? But the thing is, you're kind of toggling between heaven. Oh my god, she's so perfect and everything's so amazing, right? And then now, when one bad thing happens, it just feels so much worse in comparison. So, if you stepped out of it, if you zoomed out for a little bit and then see how you went from this big high to a big low, and that's what makes it feel a lot worse than it actually is. If you can see that, you can see how it it it's not necessarily a deal breaker, right? And the thing is, ultimately, it would be nice if we didn't really know about our partner's past, and it would be ideal. It would be like a fairy tale ending if we were all our first loves, and then but actually, even though we were our first, we were perfectly compatible from the beginning, and that's like the fairy tale ending. But in reality, um first time relationships tend to be pretty horrible because both parties generally don't have the maturity that's required for a relationship to work, right? Because relationships are about meeting the other person in the middle for a greater good. So 1 plus 1 is 2, right? So by merging these two together, the output has to be greater than 2 for it to work, for it to be considered beneficial, right? But what happens? People unite and then they keep fighting. And then the output of their one-on-one ends up being actually less than 2, right? And this is something that you learn by experience. Like, oh man, last time I feel like I was insisting on my needs too much. Relationships and marriages and things like that. These are all about, even though I, as one individual, can occasionally compromise and not get the thing that I want as myself, as a result of that, it blooms into something bigger. So, yes, I compromised point 0.5, but I gained 3 as a result. This is the power, and this is what makes a relationship sort of worth it, right? But in the end, for you to kind of see this from an objective perspective view, you need trial and error. And so does your partner. So, is it the nicest thing to know that your partner had contracted a disease, a transmittable disease from their ex? Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like the best thing ever, but in the end, it's not a deal breaker, and it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really rank really, really bad in the realm of bad things to happen. So, um, I think keeping these things in mind, understanding that in reality, fairness is kind of a man-made concept. And in general, when the more you go into the future, the more you will equalize and normalize into some kind of a fairness. And number 3, uh, learning how to see the fairness in this situation. Like this event is not all bad, because you can turn it into something that is kind of a good opportunity for you. It can be a good opportunity for reflections. It can be a good opportunity for you to assess, is this relationship worth it to me? Like, what does a relationship mean to me? Like, why does this person's, contraction mean so much for me? Do I want to control this other person? Like, is this true love, or is it attachment that I have? These are good opportunities to kind of reflect on these things. So it's not all bad, right? And lastly, um, it's really important that we focus on being the person who makes the world a fair place. So we all implicitly want to benefit from other people because it feels nice, it's efficient. I don't have to do anything, and then I just get something, right? But if everybody just wants to benefit from other people, the world will kind of be a worse place. So contrast that with living in a world where everybody wants to help other people. If I'm living in a world where it's filled with people who want to be of help to others, who want to make the world a fairer place, even if it comes at a cost for them, I would argue that that's a better world for me to live in, at least. So keep all these things in mind, and then I think it'll give you a broader view of your situation.